Good evening, my name is Garrett, and welcome to The Last Call. On tonight's Versus, we have the battle from the Buffalo Trace. This is Buffalo Trace Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey, coming in at a 45% ABV, no official age statement, versus Eagle Rare Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey, coming in at a 45% ABV and a 10-year age statement. Now, the reason I wanted to put these two up against each other is because here in 2023 still, they are either hard to find, highly allocated, or just in general, above MSRP pricing on these. But when you boil them down, they are very similar overall. They're both using mash bill number 1, which tends to be a low rye mash bill, and the Eagle Rare comes with a 10-year age statement. At one point in time, this actually also used to be a single barrel option as well. And that's kind of crazy to think about, that a 10-year single barrel used to be on every shelf and at a reasonable price, especially again in today's market. But because of supply constraints, they had to switch away from that single barrel label. Also, I wanted to be able to put these up against each other because in case you run across these in a market that maybe they are inflated pricing, where your money is best spent. So let's talk about it. We're going to be going in, talking about notes, talking about taste, wrap it up in the market price section, and pick a winner. And as always, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, hang around for a bit. If you're interested in the individual reviews over these, they'll be linked up above and down below to check out, along with some other Buffalo Trace reviews that I've done. Now, both of these you can also find in single barrel options for like store picks, so you can technically still find the Eagle Rare as a single barrel option too. They tend to be more expensive, but the Buffalo Trace tends to be pretty reasonable still as a single barrel option, depending on your market. Color-wise, definitely the Eagle Rare is a darker. By a little bit, not a whole heck of a lot, but they are noticeably darker on the Eagle Rare. All right, let's start on notes for the Buffalo Trace. And to be honest, it's got a great nose. For me, it's almost dessert cakey. Like rich dessert, a little bit of cherries, raspberries, a little bit of grain sweetness in there, but very easy going on the nose. No ABV, nothing harsh, no off notes. Nice layer of oak, bit of vanilla going on as well. And for me, I just love it because it comes across as just a slice of cake, little bit of fruit drizzle coming across the sides, a little bit of raspberry chocolate, and it's just got this beautiful, just dessert-like to it. I love the spices in here. It's just got a very low rye spice going on. The corn notes are sweet, simple, and just overall, like the prime example of a Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey on the nose. All right, let's go for notes on the Eagle Rare. Oh boy, that is significantly different. So, for me, the Eagle Rare brings across more depth of oak, a little heavier, a little thicker, spice, and almost a little bit of green apple. Beautiful light fruitiness in there. A little bit of oak spice, and a little bit of grain too. That little bit of sweet corn going on. And a little bit of chariness. You're definitely getting that more char effect going on. Let's go back to the Buffalo Trace here. And see, yeah, that's just sweet and inviting. It's almost like this is the little brother to the Eagle Rare, because this has got a little more friendly, a little more inviting, a little more classic, where here it's getting a little bit more mature and a little more hefty notes going on. Oh, that's so nice. No ABV, nothing harsh, no off notes over here either. Beautiful nose. But let's go for taste on the Buffalo Trace. What's to argue about that sip? It's simple. Got beautiful corn sweetness going on, a little bit of oak, vanilla, caramel, a little bit of char showing up on the taste as well. Deep, rich spices going on too. Part of that coming from that oak layer. And as you just keep letting it kind of evolve, you just get a little bit more of that deeper, heavier oak note. A little sweeter. I'm getting a little bit more fruit on the taste as well. And because I found that apple sweetness over here, I'm now getting a little bit of apple sweetness on the taste for this one too. I mean, that's a hard one to argue with. Again, very classic. You get all the beautiful spices, the grain sweetness, I will say you do find a little bit of ethanol in the taste. It's not overpowering, it's not off, it's not bad, but it does kind of show up, especially here in the finish. It just kind of leaves you going, I wanted more flavor and less of that kind of thin bite to it. But overall, it's still a really good sip. Coats fairly well for a 45% ABV. At the end of the day, it's a hard one to argue with. It's got some beautiful flavors there, great for cocktails, but also just a great, neat sip as well. All right, let's go for taste on the Eagle Rare. Deeper, oakier notes going on here. It has so much more heft on the palate. The spice layers, the oak tannins coming on here. That little bit of fruitiness all just blends together beautifully on the taste. Even here in the finish, that little bit of alcohol that I was getting isn't showing up here. It's just got this beautiful bit of almost dark, rich caramel to it. Where this was kind of like just got a little bit of caramel. Here it's that dark and heavy, and it's got almost not quite a burnt caramel, but more of a darkened caramel to it. Like it's getting near the place of being burnt, but it's just got all this hefty flavor into it. Right up front, you get that beautiful little poof of apple, and then it rides into those spices from the oak layers, that tannin, the oak spices with that bit of caramel and vanilla are playing together very well. And then it just kind of rides out with a nice layer of spice, oak layer, and just a bit of that fruit sweetness coming back in again. Honestly, it's a hard one to argue with as well. For a 10-year age statement option, it showcases that very, very well to a T. If anything, it doesn't have a good enough cling to it that you would want from a 10-year-old bourbon, in my opinion, and that's because it's only 45%. I feel like if this was a little bit higher ABV, we'd get a little bit better cling to it. But again, it's still hard to argue with. And again, this is what makes this one so hard, and really they are very close to call on this one so far. But let's get to the market price section before we get to a winner. So, as always, we know market price is market price, and it's always going to vary. So, in my market, I was able to pick this up for about $25, and MSRP is about that range. So, $25, I've seen it sometimes go as high as $28 to $30 in my market, but usually $25 is about where it lands in common areas. So when it comes to the Eagle Rare, I paid $60. Now, average MSRP is about $30 to $35. Now, I think it's worth more than the $35 price point. However, my markets and a lot of markets aren't seeing this drop anywhere less than $60. Some markets are actually going up into the $100 price point for it. And when it comes down to it, I gotta be honest. If this is $25 and this is $100, pick this up any day of the week. This isn't worth $100. Now, $25 versus $60, I don't think that's too far of a stretch. Again, in my opinion, I feel like the Eagle Rare is worth more than the $30 to $35 price range. I would feel comfortable paying about $50 without much of an argument on it because of that 10-year age statement. I think with the change in the times, that's where it's probably going to land up in most markets. Now, again, I don't think it's worth $100, but at $60, I'm okay with that. And I think, again, it lands more in that $50 price range. Now, when it comes down to it, again, I wouldn't pay over the $30 for a Buffalo Trace. I think $25 is where it needs to be. But in a pinch, if I was giving this for a gift, would I spend $30 on it? Yeah, I wouldn't argue too much on that. But would I spend over $60 again for this? Probably not. I think it's a really great sip, but definitely not over that $60 what I paid for it. It probably lives more in the $50 price range if I'm going to be honest. But at the end of the day, if this is $25 and this is $50, buy the Eagle Rare. It's a great sip. The flavors that are coming across in this with that 10-year age statement really do stand out. It's beautifully done. But if this is way overpriced and you still see this sitting there at $25, grab it. It's worth that price any day of the week. $25 to sub $30 is where it needs to be. Even, again, I still think that $25 is where it needs to be, but in a pinch, you could pay a little bit more. I still think you'll be fairly happy with it. But at the end of the day, if this is at a reasonable price point in your market, definitely grab this over the Buffalo Trace. You're just going to enjoy it a little bit more. So yeah, there you have it, folks. The Battle of the Buffalo Traces. Buffalo Trace Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey versus the Eagle Rare Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey. If you have any questions about either bottle, go and let me know down in the comment section below. I will do my best to answer it. And if you have any bottles I should put up against each other, also let me know down below. Love doing these A/B comparisons. Helps you learn and hopefully make a better decision for spending your money. And as always, may your last drink of the night be the best one.
You know, and I really like it might